All right, I would like to call the June 18th, 2024 meeting of the Audit Committee to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Chair Schutte,
Here.
Vice Chair Lambin,
Here.
Member Duke,
Here.
Member Scalia,
Here.
Member Stack.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. At this time, the public is invited to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of this public body. Is there any public comment? All right. Then number 4, for possible action, approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes from the last meeting? Are there any changes or corrections? All right, then I will entertain a motion.
I would move that we accept the minutes from our last meeting.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor? Or
Aye.
just aye, sorry. Anyone opposed? All right, minutes are approved. So agenda item 5, for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a report prepared by the Carson City Internal Auditor, Eide Bailey, LLP, for the fiscal year 2024 audit work program concerning the city's DevNet system, including findings and recommendations. Sherry Russell Benaboo, would you please
Good morning.
fill us in?
Good morning. Yes, our first item is DevNet. We have 2 audits we're going to be presenting today. And I don't see Audrey Donovan. She's our manager on the line yet. Kathy, can you help with this one, or Brad? Usually we give a
Let me.
quick rundown of the
He's having
findings.
technical issues. He's having technical issues, but let me ping her real quick. But if not, Brad and I could walk through the findings.
Great.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, Audrey wanted to say a few words, but just before I go over the results from our DevNet system review for the assessor's office, we just wanted to express our gratitude for the opportunity and working with the Chief Information Security Officer, the Treasurer, Andy, and the Assessor, Kim. So just wanted to give that kudos. So I will go over the results from the DevNet system review for the Assessor's Office. So the objective of the engagement was to evaluate the DevNet internal controls to ensure completeness, accuracy, and timeliness of the property assessment role. Additionally, to assess the reliability of the system and data. The scope of this engagement was for July 2023 to April 2024. Our review indicated that the risks related to the DevNet system are being managed appropriately, that internal controls are in place to reduce IT-related risk, and the data is accurate, completed, and reported timely. We identified one finding with an accompanying recommendation to strengthen the internal controls for the user access review. By addressing this issue and the associated risks, the provided recommendation should positively affect the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the DevNet system. It is important to note that management is in agreement with the recommendation and provided a detailed response to the addressed identified risks. The finding identified is DevNet system user access review for both the assessor and treasurer's office. We reviewed all employees with DevNet access and noted that there was no process for performing formal user access reviews within the system. The absence of user access reviews increased the risk of unauthorized access to the DevNet system and data. This could potentially lead to data breaches, loss of sensitive information, and damage to the assessor and treasurer's office. Based on the finding, we recommend both offices should create and implement a structured process for conducting regular DevNet user access reviews. This process should include outlining the frequency of reviews, responsible parties, reviewed criteria, and escalation procedures for identified issues. On the positive note, the treasurer has been proactive by performing a review and identified 2 users with DevNet access that were not deactivated. The treasurer then removed their access to prevent unauthorized accessibility to the system. In addition, there was no indication that these 2 employees have access to the DevNet system, as they had not had access to the computer terminal with the DevNet applications. In addition, the assessor's office currently has a process in place for deprovisioning users access through the IT's termination checklist, which includes the DevNet system. As mentioned before, management is in agreement with the recommendation and provided a detailed response to our recommendation and the response to mitigate the risks identified. That concludes our briefing on the DevNet system review for the assessor's office. I will turn it over to the audit committee for any questions at this time.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then we are at agenda item 5B. Or,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. Can you accept the report?
Oh, I'm sorry. So demanding. Let me get to that other. Sorry. Is there a motion to accept the report?
I'll make the motion. Bonnie? I move to approve the report and direct staff to work on the recommendations as discussed.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the report is accepted. Thank you. Agenda item 5B for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a report prepared by the Carson City Internal Auditor, Eide Bailey LLP, for the fiscal year 2024 audit work program concerning the city's accounts payable and procurement card process, including findings and recommendations. Sherry?
Thank you. So this is in my office. Obviously, it's accounts payable and the P card process. I'll turn it over to Audrey Donovan or Kathy, whoever's going to kick off the findings.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry, and audit committee members. I apologize for my technical difficulties in joining you all today. I was actually on an hour earlier because I have technical difficulties every time, and thank you for the host that sent, I think, 3 emails out, and the third one is the one that actually worked. So thank you. Want to thank you all for your continued support. Honestly, without you guys being here and your continued engagement and talking with us about internal audit topics and the importance of city operations, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you all. This audit was initiated as part of our ongoing efforts to comprehensively review the operational functions on a rotational basis. The accounts payable and P-card process is a fundamental component of the city's financial operations and was deemed essential for evaluation to ensure the efficiency, accuracy, and compliance with policies and procedures. I am pleased to introduce you to Kathy Villamar, Senior Associate at Eide Bailey, who will provide us with a detailed overview of the audit objective, key findings, recommendations. It'll also walk us through the outcomes of the audit and shed some light on areas for improvement and optimization within the accounts payable and P-card process. Kathy?
Thank you, Audrey, and good afternoon, everyone. I am now going to go over the AP and P-card process review. So the objective of this review was to evaluate the accounts payable process and ensure that invoices are paid for authorized purchases, duplicate invoices are not paid, and vendors are paid timely. Additionally, we also reviewed the issuance and usage of procurement cards or P cards and compliance with purchasing guidelines. The scope of this engagement was July 2023 through January 2024. Our review indicated that effective controls exist over the AP and P card function, and we identified 2 findings with accompanying recommendations to strengthen the internal controls for the AP and P card process. The first of the 2 findings relates to duplicate vendors. On our review of the vendor master file, we identified 46 duplicate vendors out of 4,551 active vendors based on matching criteria such as vendor name and vendor address. That being said, we want to note that some duplicates are unavoidable due to various circumstances, such as vendors with different remittance addresses, shared office spaces, or vendors that have merged and now share the same addresses. Based on this finding, we recommended that the city establish ongoing monitoring processes and conduct periodic reviews of the vendor master file to identify and merge duplicate vendor records. Additionally, implementing standardized naming conventions and data entry guidelines can help prevent future occurrences of duplicate entries. Moving on to finding number 2, which relates to a duplicate invoice. We performed a review of the city's invoice tracking report and look at all P-card transactions during the audit period to identify duplicates. We identified one invoice that was paid twice, once by check and again by P-card. The city has already taken steps to correct this error by contacting the vendor for a refund. To address this, we recommended that the city implement processes to cross-check invoices and payment records across different payment methods. If possible, the city should utilize automated systems or software tools to help identify potential duplicate payments. Additionally, the city should conduct regular reviews of payment transactions to identify discrepancies and potential duplicate payments to prevent financial losses. Management is in agreement with the recommendations and provided detailed responses to address the identified risks. That concludes our briefing of the AP and P-card process review. I want to thank you for this privilege and opportunity to provide this briefing, and at this time, I would also like to express my gratitude to everyone in the finance department involved in conducting this engagement, the accounting manager, Jamie, the deputy CFO, Pamela, and of course, Sherry. Thank you, and I now turn it over to the audit committee for questions at this time.
Thank you so much. Do any of you have any questions regarding this?
You can ask me questions too. It's fair. Fair
Yeah.
game.
And so when I called the other day, and so the some of the billing is weekly, some of the billing is monthly.
Yeah.
Can you
so-
speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So with the duplicate payment that Catherine went over, what happens, and sometimes we catch it, sometimes we don't. Our system is supposed to catch it, because if you put in that invoice number, the system is supposed to say, "Wait, you already paid that." However, if you add a space or a period or something, one little thing different, it'll say, "Oh, okay, we'll pay it." So if you get a lazy employee who doesn't, say, "Wait a minute, did we already pay this?" and they just add something to get it through, we have a duplicate payment. So what typically happens is somebody will pay it with a P card, and they won't, like we tell them to write P card on the invoice, whose P card it is, so that the person doing the data entry is aware. And so sometimes that doesn't happen. The invoice gets paid with the P cards, but then somehow it also ends up with their AP batch. So then it's in the P cards that we only reconcile monthly, and then it ends up somehow in AP as well. So they also key it in and pay it as an invoice as well. Typically, the check will go out because those are done weekly, and then later when we're reconciling P cards, we'll see another payment. We typically do catch that and look for reimbursements. It's very hard. So what we're going to do is during the P card process, we're going to print out the list of checks for the last month and invoice numbers, and compare that to the invoice numbers and the checks that are paid on the P card batch, and make sure that we've caught everything. So it happens pretty rarely, though. I will say that departments are pretty good about splitting those things up and only putting them in once. When I first started here, it happened a lot more with our old system. Our old system didn't have that warning, so.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, yes.
I'm just curious, as far as the P cards go, like, how are they controlled? Is it department head control? Is it unit manager within department control?
There are a lot of controls. So to start off, the employee has to sign the policy and understand the rules of the P card. They're given the P card. Every month, their transactions are reviewed by their department head, and then they come to us for review If they're outside of the travel policy or they've paid sales taxes, which the city doesn't pay sales taxes, then they have to reimburse us, period. So they are responsible for that card. So if they spend it on something they're not supposed to, they reimburse the city. If it happens 3 times, we usually take the P card away, period. You've lost your privileges.
Are there any other questions? Would someone like to make a motion or to approve or do whatever?
I would move that we approve the findings.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, findings are approved. Item 5C for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding the monitoring, review, and closure of internal audit findings and/or recommendations included in the audit findings tracking report and providing a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to close completed findings and/or recommendations. Take it away, Sherry.
Thank you very much. So I have a lot of recommendations for you guys today. We've been doing a lot of work. So we'll start with the preliminary risk assessment for the body-worn camera. That's a few pages in. We're still working on the community development and the IT vulnerability. Hopefully you guys got colored copies. So the first orange section, finding 1 and finding 3 on the body camera. Basically finding 1 was to get a monitoring system to watch performance metrics and how the body cam is being used. And it's our second year now, and we haven't been able to afford the system. The sheriff says that he is in compliance with all of the laws and all of the body cam regulations. Because in addition to the system, they want a FTE to also monitor that system and monitor the body cam usage and do everything that the auditors recommended. And unfortunately, we just can't afford an FTE to watch a system. So it's been 2 years and it hasn't passed the budget. So
I have a question on this. In terms of the performance metrics and the goals, is this something that the full-time employee, can that person actually do this in the standard operating procedure? I mean, standard supervision, all of that? I mean, does it
Yeah, so
have
they
to link
have-
to
So they
IT?
have an NRS, and they have the sheriff is in compliance with all of the rules and regulations about those body cams when they turn them on and off. Discipline for not doing so in a timely manner. All of those things are already in place. This is just a system to help gather all of the data on all of the officers and give detailed information.
Okay.
And so I'm recommending that we close this because the city has been 2 years now and the city obviously can't afford the system. Or it's not a priority.
Mhm.
So, I mean,
So the
we can move
purpose,
forward and keep trying to get it through, but the performance metrics and the goals are really I feel like it's for a much bigger entity.
above and beyond what we need
Yes.
in light of the fact that the laws are being followed and
Right.
there are already procedures in place to ensure that officers are wearing the body cams
Yes.
and turning them on.
and off and keeping them in a certain amount of time and all of the things they're supposed to be doing, they are doing. They're in compliance. I mean, even the undersheriff, I spoke with him and he's in agreement with closing this because he doesn't feel it would be a huge benefit to their department.
Okay, so the cost benefit ratio is,
Exactly.
okay. Are there any other questions on that?
I actually have a
Yes.
couple of questions. So right now, who is reviewing the body cam footage?
The sergeants when necessary.
The sergeants when necessary. Okay. 'Cause here it
And I
says,
believe they have a rotating, like they spot check them too.
gotcha.
occasionally.
Okay. So is that the random portion of that? Um, okay. So if we do move to remove this or to close it out, so to speak, that's something that wouldn't be revisited then again, correct? Unless it's needed by public outcry or whatever that situation may be. that would-
Yes, I mean, you guys can all want, if you want another audit, we can look at it again in, 3 to 5 years. Or if the sheriff really wants this, he can come back to this audit and say, look, we actually do really need this. They recommended it back in whatever, we just didn't have the funds then. So, I mean, the audit would still support that in the future if we decided to close it now.
So the sheriff's department, and I think you said you were in agreement, is stating that they don't need an FTE, they don't need and would that, let's say it did get approved and it did get passed, or sales tax increased over this next year, would that be that FTE be from the sheriff's department, or would that be like an independent or?
No, it would be a sheriff's department. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what they were asking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I got a quick one.
Yes.
And wouldn't this also involve more than one FTE? Because wouldn't there be 24/7, 365 monitoring?
So the system works in coordination with dispatch. So my understanding is the system would gather the data, but then there'd be
Okay.
one person to kind of make sure that it was
Okay.
done correctly and kind of review the videos.
Okay.
Yeah, they
So this
just
isn't
wanted a
live.
whole FTE to monitor the system
Right.
that also costs money.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Thank you.
So the next one I was going to talk about was utility billing. And that's closure on items 4 and 6. Item number 4 was the auditors asked us to do a cost benefit analysis to look at an advanced metering infrastructure. We have looked at that and we are going to start moving towards that. They're going to start migrating towards it. So as we have done the cost benefit analysis and we are going to start moving towards it, I figure we can close this finding because it doesn't say implement system. Just make sure it's there's a cost benefit analysis. So they've determined that we should be doing that. So we're going to start moving towards that. So I was going to close that one. And then number 6 was about the water billings. And so they did hire a consultant. They're awaiting the final report, but they're going to also implement an ongoing verification of all accounts. So this is the one where there were so many accounts that were identified that were not billed, and they were zeros. And so they wanted us to either, in one of the services, either water, stormwater, it was, one of the services was 0. And, it's because some people have wells, some people have septic, some people, don't have both, so some bills are appropriately 0, but we didn't have a process in place to check that. So we finished with the consultant. So we believe everything's okay now. And we have an ongoing verification process. So I was going to ask to close this one as well. Sorry, obviously utility billing is not my first function.
Well, and I know you did a nice job, and I know this subject is brought up during growth management in talking about the different utility billings, and it is difficult because some people, yes, they're billed both sewer and water, others just water, others just sewer. So
Right.
Some,
people have
and
stormwater
everybody
thrown in
wastes,
there, some don't.
everybody stormwater, so.
Right.
Right, okay. Is, Andy, is this something you're comfortable with? And I know this really isn't part of your purview per se, the utility billing, but it affects you or your department?
So for the record, Andrew Razor, Carson City Treasurer's Office. So when it comes to the utility billing, we are doing the revenue collection. So we don't
right,
don't
okay.
handle the billing part. But I do know like what Supervisor Schutte was saying, because we get a lot of people that come to the front counter at the Treasurer's Office or have their complaints that they will complain about, why are they paying for the stormwater? Well, that's a Carson City Municipal Code mandate that everybody pays for that stormwater, even if you have a well or you do have storm or a regular sewer water service. So that is something that we see. But yeah, we just do that revenue collection for the treasurer's office.
Perfect, thank you. All right.
All right, we'll continue with the clerk recorder's office and their system. I believe we can close all three of the remaining findings and close this out altogether. So number 6, 8, and 10 were all outstanding, and IT has implemented systems to fix what was wrong in those three findings. If you have specific questions, IT's here to help. It was the Palo Alto network and the DX VR rail deployment that has answered those questions or those findings.
Were there any questions on any of these? Okay.
And then the last one is the DevNet system, because promptly upon learning of the user access issue, both the treasurers and the assessors went to work and fixed it. And both of them have gone through their user lists and made sure that only the appropriate users are using it and have a plan going forward to make sure that it stays that way. So we introduced the item, which I don't usually do, and we're also closing. I'm also recommending closure today because it's complete. So.
All right, and I wrote on my notes, great. Well done.
It's a quick one, yeah. We like those.
Okay. Is there any discussion or concerns, thoughts, ideas? No?
Actually, I do have a question for the group at large. Do we know, does the Carson City Sheriff's Department have a lot of complaints that are lodged against them? I honestly don't know. I'm just curious if anybody would know that off the top.
You know, that would be a DA question. I don't think there are a ton.
Mihaela Niagos, Deputy District Attorney for the record. I am not familiar with any of the complaints that were made. I can come back and let you know. I'm not aware of any pending litigation regarding this issue at this point.
I think occasionally I hear about unnecessary use of force or something,
Sure.
but that's pretty common.
Yeah,
you know,
and-
sometimes it's not really
bad. Yeah, and the only reason I ask is because it would seem like the recommendation is just to remove the additional, I'll just say monitoring of the body-worn cameras off of the agenda here for us, and essentially it would only be brought up again if either a member of the public or the sheriff wanted that. So I just wanted to make sure that I, for the record, asked the questions that I wanted to validate that it's not a situation where we have a sheriff's department making the recommendation of, hey, we don't need the additional folks to watch us because we'll watch ourselves. And so.
Yeah, no, this was a joint effort. I'm also the risk manager.
Okay.
Like, that's under my title too. So So we talked about, you know, the idea that do they need a monitor of the monitors, you know, because we have the body worn camera. So it is a liability issue if it's not on and something happens. But because we don't have a lot of liability claims out there and, you know, it just doesn't seem a real risk right now.
I
Excellent.
think you worded it well, the monitor of the monitor. So I think right
Right.
there shows redundancy is important, but this might be more redundancy than is actually needed. Okay.
At this time, yeah, we're all feeling it's a little excessive and expensive for what
Okay.
we need today.
All right. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Would someone like to make a motion?
And you can totally just say as discussed on the record, unless you don't want to close one of those items, because I did go through a lot, so.
And I would move that we close the items that you've recommended closing.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. The next item. Agenda item 5D for discussion only, discussion regarding fiscal year 2024 audit work program update and hotline activity. Sherry.
So this is kind of a wrap up because we're pretty much done 2024. But I'm going to turn it over to Audrey so she can tell us if there's been any hotline activity and how her year's gone.
Excellent. Thank you, Sherry. And you guys do have an advanced copy of the slide of the presentation deck that we were going to share. And at this time, since I know you guys have the slides in front of you, I won't share my screen and just go through where we're at today with the internal audit status, and recognizing that the internal audit plan that was approved last year, this time last year for FY24, has all been completed, and that includes the cash handling internal audit, which was completed and delivered to audit committee on March 26th of this year. We had the clerk recorder, which was information technology internal audit, and that was delivered on January 9th of this year. We have the accounts payable P-card and P-card transaction internal audit completed at this meeting here, and the DevNet system for the assessor's office, again, completed here. We will address the risk assessment, and that will be in our next, staffing report. And then the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline would be the next item on this. We did receive 2 reports from the hotline during this last reporting period, and after thorough review, both reports were determined not to be applicable to the city. And that's not unusual. It seems that we rarely get anything that is related to the city, which is positive, in my opinion. I did reach out to Sherry, and we spoke about ways in which the city advertises the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. And she noted that I just lost my train of thought. She noted that the city encourages that use of the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline as a confidential channel for employees, the external stakeholders, and third parties to report any perceived misconduct or irregularities. The integrity and the effectiveness of the hotline, that really relies on the collective efforts of all the individuals to maintain the culture of that accountability and ethical behavior within the organization. You can find this information published on the city's website and in the employee newsletter. I also did some research on the website and curious to know if any information popped up elsewhere. And the sheriff's office also publishes current scams or methods for individuals to protect themselves against financial loss, elder abuse, theft of a vehicle. They also include certain IRS scams, false arrest warrants, lottery scams, and even mention online dating scams. I found that interesting. So That is the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline update. And then the last item on here is follow-up, and we've just gone through that. So that really wraps up our FY20, is it 23, 24? I always get confused. It's like a little bit of a crossover. But that does
Yep.
wrap up that fiscal year. Thank
You
you.
are correct, 23, 24.
23, 24 activity. And again, my sincere gratitude for all of your involvement and input into this process, especially when we get into the risk assessment and the next internal audit plan.
Well, thank you so much. And so then for item 5E, for discussion only, discussion regarding the draft annual risk assessment and internal audit plan for fiscal year 2025.
Ooh, I did not change that for discussion only.
Oh,
This is a
yes,
motion
correct. I
item.
was just thinking for action item or possible
Yes.
action.
Yes. Is that a problem?
Uh-oh.
Yes, because it was not agendized as an action item. The audit committee would not be able to make a recommendation, but it can be presented and discussed.
Okay.
And Sherry, that should be fine. It's not ideal, but that should be fine, considering that the next action item is around the workforce audit program. Unless this is in lieu, does this need to be in place for that action item to occur?
No, but I mean, eventually we have to take this to the Board of Supervisors as a recommendation.
Oh, yep.
So it does have to be
Yep.
a discussion or a action item. So I'm very sorry. I just noticed that error. If we'll talk about the next meeting
I
and
was
maybe
going to
have
say we
that
can-
earlier than we normally would. In July or August sometime. But we can discuss anyway, and we'll come back and just be able to approve it.
Okay.
Sorry about that. There was also late material on this item. The city manager wanted to add the citywide take-home vehicles evaluation. She's been trying to do it herself for several months and decided she really needed some best practices in order to come up with a citywide policy. So she asked the audit committee to take a look at that. Obviously, if you look at what Audrey has here, there's almost $160,000. So the budget's 110. So we're going to have to make some tough decisions, but I guess we'll have Audrey go through the different procedures and see where we are at the end.
I think that's a
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. And also in light of that, we do need to trim about $50,000. Perhaps really thinking on this is not a bad idea. So having a meeting follow up sooner over later with an action item where we can really kind of mull this over thoughtfully is a silver lining.
Okay, I like it.
Take it away, Audrey. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So we did brief the risk assessment and audit plan in our last meeting, but I will go over briefly and actually just jump ahead to the internal audit plan, the FY24-25 plan, unless you guys have any questions about the risk assessment, anything around the methodology, how we got to the internal audit plan agenda. Please stop me right now. Right, so the plan starts out with the internal audit related activities. We have 3 there. The first is the annual risk assessment update. We leverage all the information since year 1 to current, and then information as it comes in throughout the year. That includes information from our current internal audits, the status of our outstanding follow-up and activity, So risk is constantly being evaluated, and in this case, we call it an update because it is more of a small truncated process rather than an overall full-blown risk assessment process. That is estimated to be about 60 hours and estimated fees of $12,000. The fraud, waste, and abuse hotline, we do monitor that on a monthly basis, and in the event we do have a report that is valid, we would contact the city and get the appropriate individuals involved to assist in resolving those cases where needed. We anticipate about 5 hours. That is jumping in there into the system and seeing what reports and cases are in there on a monthly basis. If anything results, it's really on the city to let us know if they need additional assistance. And so we've estimated that to be around $875. Follow-up, that is to assist the city in validating recommendations and to ensure that the remediated action addresses the risk that was identified. And we estimated that around 2,100, so 12 hours. So the estimated total here, I'll just round up and say 1,500 to keep it, or 15,000 to keep it simple. And I'll earmark that and remind you of that in just a minute. The first proposed internal audit we have on the plan is Human Resource Workforce Management Assessment. And we have estimated this to not exceed 35,000. And this was addressed in the, or mentioned and discussed in the last audit committee meeting, and the movement and action to go ahead and create an audit program for this that you all will be looking at, I believe, in the next staff report. So this one is approved to move forward. So I want to just earmark this as well, 35,000. So now we're up to 50,000 of the 110 budget.
But
The next engagement, sorry, go
I
ahead.
have a quick question, and if you'd rather I wait till the end, but this one was
No, please.
specific. Okay, thank you. So, with the human resource workforce management, with the recent salary increases, might this help with some of the time and the dealing with this, so we might be able to trim some hours here because of salary issues, that it's not such a big lift, the staff shortages, hopefully. I don't know if that had been considered or could be in terms of the decision on hours and trying to cut back.
And actually, we did take that into consideration on the risk assessment piece, knowing that the city went out and looked at a salary analysis, and I forget the actual terminology for that. That actually does reduce the risk of this, but it does not reduce the risk of this particular topic, which is around the recruiting, the onboarding, employee performance evaluations, the training across the entire organization. We've had some turnover in the HR department with the new HR director. We may still have some skill shortages, some talent gaps.
Okay.
We've had, I apologize, but
No, that's really
those are the
helpful,
risks
and
that
that's
we were
why.
focused on.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
The next internal audit was around purchasing and contracts management. This one primarily was addressed due to the fact that the last time we had performed this engagement, it was back, or internal audit had performed this engagement, it was back in 2014. There may be some risk of inefficiencies, some non-compliance, some reputational damage could occur if there has been any misconduct that has occurred. That one has been estimated not to exceed 35,000. The third one is payroll processing to confirm the accuracy and completeness of the inputs used in payroll processing. This one was last audited in 2021. And the risks there could be errors around the payroll processing, unauthorized access to payroll data, or potential fraudulent activities. That one we have estimated at 30,000. The Public Guardian Asset Management Review to assess the adequacy of the controls and procedures to protect the assets of the wards under the guardianship from loss, misuse, or unauthorized transactions. The public guardian was not part of the Treasurer's Office surprise cash audit. We did just deliver a public guardian internal audit report that did not address, it was cash management piece for the public guardian. It was not a public guardian report. Let me just be clear about that. Cash management included public guardian from the internal audit perspective, not from the Treasurer's Office. So from that perspective, we recognize that there is this piece that was still at risk of maybe mismanagement of assets, lack of accountability, or legal and regulatory non-compliance. We do have a new public guardian, and we do have some relatively new staff. We felt that this one would estimate it about 15,085 hours. Lastly is the citywide take-home vehicle that Sherry mentioned the city manager would like some assistance with. And the objective of this engagement would be to evaluate the citywide take-home vehicle usage for compliance with current policies. We would identify any inefficiencies, misuse, or non-compliance with the current regulations and recommend improvements to enhance accountability, cost effectiveness, overall governance, and alignment with best practice. The risks listed here are, you guys I'm sure have read that, but there's a multitude of them, and we can understand that the city manager wants to focus in on those departments that are allotted that they'll take home vehicles. We estimated that a range because we have not really gotten in there and understood what the processes are, if it's well documented. We understand that the city manager has a listing and a population that would help us get started. So that would be a range of 25 to 30,000. So as you guys know, we had mentioned before, the overall responsibilities were about 15,000, and to continue with the HR workforce was 35, so that's 50,000 of the 110 budget. I don't want to tell you guys how to decide, and I like your suggestion that next time we get together is an opportunity for you guys to come forward and say which ones you guys want to focus on.
Just to make sure you have all the information, the public guardians one was done in 2017. Again, that was, quite some time ago, but I mean, that one wouldn't hurt to put off a year. And then the purchasing and contracts management, our external auditor actually looks pretty closely at that every year. So that one wouldn't be too bad to push forward. It seemed like everybody was really excited about the human resource workforce management. So we can keep that, or we can push that forward a year as well. Payroll, we can also push forward a year. We say we'll do payroll every 3 to 5 years. This is year 4. So we could push that forward. I mean, honestly, there's really nothing on here we can't push forward. Other than the city take-home vehicles, we really kind of want to make that a priority if possible.
I had, have you got an idea of how many vehicles are involved in the take-home?
I've seen that list.
I'm sorry?
I have not seen that list. The city manager's working on it.
Okay. And then the other one was with the asset protection. Any idea of what the total balance is? I mean, how much money?
For, the public guardian?
Yeah.
They
sorry.
usually have 60 to 80 wards that they have to track each account on. And those wards, typically, I know they use QuickBooks, and they had several findings in 2017. They did take a couple years to fix those findings and put processes in place, and they have procedures now. It wouldn't be a bad idea to go back and make sure it's still happening, because they've had complete turnover in that department since that time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, on the human resources thing, the risk potential as far as shortages of talent, et cetera, unless you glamorize government work, it's going to be a continual, it's everywhere. This isn't the only place that has an issue. The department I worked in, I retired after 32 years, and they're lucky to keep people 5 to 10. They'll come into small agencies and use it as a training ground and bolt to greener pastures. So I just don't think an audit's going to find a magic bullet to fix this for you.
I didn't think that was a question. I mean, I agree. It's tough, especially in the climate right now. There's so much construction going on that private companies are paying a lot more than we pay, so.
Are there any other comments or any public comment on this? I know it's not an action item, but just for purposes of thinking about how to proceed. All right.
Okay, we'll bring the same item back next time for action. I
Yeah.
do apologize.
Well, okay. Then I think
And if it's the pleasure of this board to bring item 5F back once we determine the full year, we can do that as well.
okay, I think that would make more sense.
Okay,
All right. Then
so we'll table it.
we will table 5F, and so 5G for discussion only. Discussion regarding the dates for our next meeting.
Can anybody meet, can you guys meet in early July?
Yes, I can.
Maybe the week of the 8th, maybe on the 9th? Okay. I was going to
work?
recommend August and September, so I had to recheck my calendar. Audrey, is that okay? Are you
It'll work just
available?
fine.
Okay, I just want to
Ye-
make sure you're available.
yes.
You're a big part of this.
I'll actually just share my background because I'll be in Costa Rica that week, but I am bringing my laptop and plan to work part-time there. So maybe
Oh,
I'll sit in a nice, beautiful place and you can observe the background while we're meeting.
fancy.
So you're sure you would plan to work?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
It will be a very short meeting because
We will
they
be,
don't have an audit plan for 25 yet. So
right, okay.
I will go ahead and have them prepare and agreed upon procedures for the vehicles, though, so that they
Perfect.
can hit the ground running with something after next meeting. Does that make sense?
That sounds great.
Okay, great.
So at 1:30 then on Tuesday, the 9th?
Yes.
With the time change, does that work for Costa Rica?
Yes, it does.
Okay. I'm trying to think 3 hours ahead.
I don't even think it's 3 hours ahead. Is it?
Mm.
Oh, okay.
I think it's an
2?
hour.
Is
Oh,
it only
okay,
1
that
hour?
close.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's
And
probably
two.
1 hour.
For me,
Okay.
where I'm at.
Oh, from you. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Then public comment. The public is invited at this time to comment on any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on a matter raised under this item of the agenda. Okay, then we can go ahead and adjourn. And thank you, and Ide Bailey team, thank you so much. And we just appreciate what you do and your work. And you're always just so positive and and we appreciate you. So thank you.
I'm so sorry, Audrey. All my fault.
Oh, no,
This didn't
we're
go as
fine.
planned. Sorry.
Okay.
These things happen. We adjust.
All right. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.